Hello, LinkedIn. Hello, YouTube. Hopefully this is going. All right. What are we talking about today? This should be fair. Different things for customers in different segments or different stages of their life cycle with you. So just wanted to walk through what activation means, and as is often the case with these videos, putting together these slides and whatnot, it's almost just reinforcing for myself, for us. This is how we approach something like activation, defining these key metrics. One of the things too is that activation is not a one and done thing. You're definitely looking at activation as an ongoing metric, and we'll talk about that too. So there's a bit of a branding problem for activation, in that it's treated as maybe it's like poorly defined, right? So activation being something that, again, I mentioned it before, it's like if you can get your customers to reach that aha moment, they have to take a certain set of actions to be activated, reaching that aha moment. And the branding problem is that, well, I think the purpose of this slide is really to say it's more important than a lot of teams give it credit for. It's more important than I used to give it credit for. I used to look at things like how engaged are they, how active are they, just in terms of like frequency, are they logging in, how often are they logging in, and I do think that activity metrics like active 3 out of the last 7, if you're doing B2B SaaS, is important to measure that. But then you have to also understand what are they doing when they are active. So activation having a branding problem is that it's often either looked at as a standalone metric or sort of taken out of context, I think. And so the activation that we like to track with a coil, and it's the point of view that we take on this, is that it's one of the key metrics that you need to watch for your customers getting value from your product. And it's not just when they're onboarding, it's when you have, say, new users joining companies or your key accounts. Are they being activated? If you are constantly updating your product, rolling out new features, all that sort of stuff, activation will not be this static thing that once they hit that milestone, they're done forever. You can constantly be reactivating dormant accounts. Existing, even high engagement accounts can be activated. Mentioned before, just are you rolling out new features? And a good example of that is company Lumen, video collaboration platform. Over the past couple of years, everyone's moved to AI, right? So if you're spending time, money, resources, energy, putting that into building out new features for your product, like going AI, and no one's using it, are they still and that is a question for new trial accounts as well as existing customers. So activation with distinct levels, they are related, of course, but we're talking about user level activation. So what are your individual users at your key accounts? What are they doing? How many of them are doing it? Are they using the key features that you want them to at an individual level? Are your users, these are the individuals, like the end users, reaching that aha moment? And then you're going to roll all of that up to account level activation. And this is basically the customer, right? If you're talking B2B SaaS here, it's which organization is paying you for your product and how well are they as a company in aggregate doing as far as activation goes. And then you're starting to look at things like how many active users do they have out of, say, their allotted seats, or whatever their entitlements are they hitting as much of those as you would hope? Are they getting close to 100% hitting using their entitlements? If they're entitled to use certain features, or use a certain amount of credits, etc., are you getting them to that point? And really, at the account level, are they getting value? And that's the question there. Quote down the bottom here: accounts don't churn just when usage drops. They churn when they stop seeing the full value of your product, even if they're using it constantly. And that's where activation, to me, comes in. If you're releasing new features, if you're rolling out updates, new workflows, what have you, are your existing customers actually doing that, in addition to the new trial customers who should be discovering that a bit more naturally, right? If you have someone that's been using your product for a long time, they might get into habits. Anything new that comes along, I know I'm guilty of it. I kind of just dismiss new things for a while until I'm kind of forced to use them sometimes, because I have habits, usage, behavior patterns, we'll call it, within a lot of the products that I use. And even when new things come out, I either jump all over it or just ignore it. And so there's risk involved in that from your key accounts. If your customers are not adopting new features, is their activation staying the same? So it's when we talk about things like logging in, using key features, and activation, this is where I think you get to really understand where your key accounts are in terms of health, right? High engagement plus high activation is typically going to mean this is a really healthy account. You can think about this at both the account and the user level too, right? Is someone coming in frequently and staying activated over time, that they're using the key features, they are continuing to get that value from the product, that aha moment, they've realized that, they've gotten there, and now they leverage that. And it's like a part of their workflow, for example. And so just going around the quadrant here, high engagement plus low activation can be a really sneaky risk right there. Because if you have someone that's coming in often, logging in daily, but not using, say, those key features that you want them to be using, that could indicate that they might not be getting the value that you hope that they will. Now, different customer segments have different usage and behavior patterns, so it's important to sort of tease that out as well. Long time ago now, we had a form builder, and we realized that some of the highest value customers were the ones that were less engaged but highly active, and that's down in that bottom left, right? So low engagement, high activation, they have used the key things, they've taken those steps to get to that aha moment, but they're not showing up all the time. And it took some customer conversations to realize what those use cases look like. And so being a form builder, what we would see is these large companies would implement a form builder as part of their workflow within all the Atlassian suite of products. And the only time that they would need to use it was when there was an incident. So from their point of view, ideally, they never touched the form other than to make sure that it was up to date. And occasionally we'd see that activity that they'd start using it, which would indicate that something bad had happened. So for them, the idea was, we don't want to be highly engaged. We will continue to be activated. They of course are not saying this, but they're routinely going back in, as I said, making sure that the form's up to date, making sure it's still working, testing it, testing the workflow. But ideally, they would never have to have anyone submit these something went wrong kind of forms. Bottom right on the screen, low engagement, low activation is a clear sign that a customer is at risk, and probably a good time to do something. So down at the bottom here, you get the insight here, and I guess is the key way of summarizing this, is that quantity can obscure quality, right? So if you're getting a whole lot of login activity, people viewing different screens, but maybe they're not actually doing anything on those screens, then that could be an indication that you've got churn risk there, or perhaps there's some blocker in the product that's keeping people from actually taking these activation steps. So if you see any roadblocks where people might be getting stuck in their workflows, stuck in their use cases, Again, it's that they show up often, but they are not activated. That's a good indication that it's time to step in and reach out to people. And that's where if we kind of take a step back here and you look at, account level and user level, look at the account. Did they have low engagement? Do they have low activation? If that's the case, okay, that's a potential risk there. So dig down deeper, go look at the individuals, who's using it, how are they using it, how are they not using it? And that way you can actually then start to figure out who you might be able to leverage internally to teach others how to use a product, or if you have someone that's a power user or a most likely power user, that would be the person to reach out to and kind of give them a nudge to get the whole customer account activated again and engaged again. What we're really talking about here is early warning systems. So if you've got a clear set of activation criteria, you know what steps you want people to take. So for a coil, things like setting up your account, connecting your data, setting up your workspaces, your engagement scoring, connecting to other tools, adding teammates. These are all activation criteria that we look for. So it's really looking at, when you're looking at your customers and your product, what are the sequence? Sorry, it's not even a sequence. What are the set of activities that you want people to be doing? It doesn't have to go in a straight line in order, but it's things that when people do these actions in our product, it's highly likely or more likely that they're going to get to that moment of value, that aha moment, as it were. I'm going to bring up that story about the form builder with the companies and their incident management reports there. So you can start to build segmentation playbooks. You'll start to see patterns, which kind of customers use your product in certain ways. And the reason that this is important is that if you just treat everyone the same, right? So the idea being, we had these customers that rarely touched the product. They stayed activated, but they weren't highly engaged. If we treated everyone like them, we'd be annoying a lot of people. Say, come back, use the product. And so by segmenting your customers based on those activation criteria, you can start to get a sense of how you nudge more accounts in the right direction in a more tailored way, right? So you want to get them engaged, you want to get the activation high, but it has to be context aware, and you can segment your customers. You can do this inside of a coil too, but you can segment your customers in a way that is based off of like activation criteria, usage and behavior patterns, feature adoption, et cetera, and then create playbooks based off of that. And activation is a good way to do that. Some of the playbooks I really like that you leverage activation include new team members coming on board to key accounts. Are you getting them activated, and how are you going about doing that? How are you making sure that that happens? Because that is part of the longevity of those customers, is that when they do add someone new, that teammate gets up to speed quickly, sees the value, adopts you, and continues to see and get value from the product. Integrating into customer success workflows. So you can start to look at your activation weekly, monthly, quarterly, start to see the trends over time there. Looking at how many customers by segment are hitting our activation criteria, questioning whether or not the activation criteria are correct anymore. As you roll out new features, as things change within the product, as the market changes, do you need to update that activation criteria so that you make sure that what's indicated or tracked in there is showing customer value when they do these things? Go back to this Lumen example here. When you add AI capabilities to your product, you want to go beyond just logging in and seeing it. Are they actively using it? Did they complete an AI setup? Products are constantly evolving. So I think activation is also evolving with it. And that's why you need to do those monthly, weekly, quarterly, however frequently you're doing your activation reviews, so that you make sure that you're tracking the right thing, which is basically like, are my customers getting value? And constantly just tweaking that. Doesn't have to take up huge amounts of time. Certainly don't want to make it seem like it's going to eat up your day. So if you do not track activation criteria, I'd say the first place to start is to define what are the things, features, activities, events inside your product that you want to make sure that new customers hit. By hit, I mean actions that they take within the product. And then I would look at also your current book of paying customers. If you want to sub-segment them down, that's fine, but just at a high level, if you haven't done activation criteria before, what are the set of features, behaviors, events that you want your paying customers to be doing on a regular basis to indicate that they are continuing to get value out of the product? And this is a checklist of things that you basically want to make sure that they're doing. And this can include things like frequency, right? So how often are they coming into your product over a weekly basis, a monthly basis? That can be an activation criteria. If they fall out of a certain threshold, say, under 3 times a week, if they get down to like below that the active 3 out of 7 days, that could be an activation criteria for you. If they slip below that, that might be a reason to put up a flag, reach out to these accounts. So set up your activation criteria. If you have set up your activation criteria and you haven't gone back and done an audit on it, or sort of, I call it an audit, a review, the question here is, are your customers stuck in 2022 or are they using your 2025 product? Everything evolves. Activation should evolve with the product as well. And then something else that you can start to do once you've got an understanding of what your activation criteria are, if they're up to date, if you're tracking what your customers should be doing today, not like 3 years ago, you can start building activation-based playbooks, right? When customers hit a certain threshold of activation, what are you going to do with them? If they have been with you for, say, 21 days out of a 30-day trial and they haven't hit an activation threshold yet, what are you going to do about that? So you can keep these really simple. Start with a number. What does it mean to you? And then what are we going to do about it? Good, bad, or otherwise. I think there's lots of opportunity to encourage positive use, like positive reinforcement. You see people that get activated really quickly, jump in and give them a hand, offer more. If you see that some companies and individuals are not getting activated within the trial period, what are you going to do about that? So it's all signals that you can then take and run activities off of. I'm using a lot of activation activity type of language today. It's basically, here's a signal, what are we going to do with it? And initially it may feel like you're being responsive, but over time you'll start to see patterns. When you start to segment your customers based on that activation criteria, you'll start to see opportunities to be proactive. And that really, at its most basic level, looks like, here's a number, an activation criteria. They're either meeting it or not. And what are we going to do about it to encourage more positive behavior or discourage negative behavior? But basically, how are we going to get our customers to that aha moment, both in that set of trial accounts and currently paying customers? And then you can start to look at more detail around, are we making sure that new users at long-term accounts are getting activated, and that account level is actually your customers are actually staying activated at that account level too. So that's all really important stuff. If you do want to see activation tracking in action, you can hit me up here in the DMs or message me. Here, go to the Acoil.com website. We do track activation in the product. We try to keep it simple for you. And once you start to see activation in context with things like engagement, adoption, frequency, all that sort of stuff, I think you'll really start to see how valuable this number is to your business as part of the whole picture of how your customers are actually using your product. All right, that's going to wrap us up for today. Thanks for tuning in.